Welcome to Modus Cafe. Join us for fun, lighthearted, and educational conversations around training, athletic longevity, and the human side of climbing. With your hosts, Mercedes Pollmeyer and Katja Dev.
All right. So we're back with another podcast, and today's episode I'm actually really excited about because this topic is the foundation of Modus. All of my practices in life and research and I guess philosophies are kind of embedded in this kind of like long-term view of the sport, which is athletic longevity. And the way that, I've really tried to structure Modus is a way to offer people different buckets of athletic longevity, so, we have the flexibility component, we have a nutrition component, we have the strength training and the skill development. And, when you look at our offerings on our website, we try to offer as much there as we can. And then in our membership, that's like, I would say that's like a big gain that you get in the membership, is that you get all of these little buckets and you can work on them long term. So we're going to talk about athletic longevity today, but we're not going to talk about the whole, like all of it, because it's such a big topic. Longevity on its own, not even talking about athletic longevity, just longevity. Like there is so much research in longevity and we could really go deep into this, but in trying to keep these podcasts short and give you kind of an overview of why it's important to us, we're just going to kind of touch on a couple different topics today. So Katja is here. Hello. How's it going?
Good. I just had to smile for myself sort of when you were introducing this episode, because I remember when we started working together and we're like talking about philosophy and what we want to bring there and what you have already brought, to this community. And it just I always come back to the fact that I feel like Modus is just like this, health and wellness of climbing. Because we care so much about just healthy humans first and, climbers second. Like, of course, we love helping people improve their climbing, but really what we want is for people to be healthy and happy for as long as they can. Mm-hmm. Sounds cheesy, is cheesy. That's what we care about.
It's what we care about.
Because we like cheese lots too.
Yeah. And it's an important part of longevity, getting your protein in.
Get your protein. Cheese is so nutritious and great. So great, and does not necessarily impact your cholesterol.
That's just right. Saying. That's right. Well, we could talk a little bit about ourselves, like in terms of like our journey.
Yes, that's a good start. I think for climbing, because we're considered old, which obviously we're not old people, but for climbing we're considered old, which is always funny. But I think, let's talk about us a little bit, like when we started climbing, how old we are now, and then we can move into our, thoughts on athletic longevity and how we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've learned a lot in my career as an athlete. I trained first as a tennis player. I got pretty far, I played semi-pro, and then I turned to climbing when I was 20. I don't really know the exact year, but I'm pretty sure I was like 24-ish when I was like, oh, I'm going to be a climber. But my motivation for both of those sports was high-end development. I wanted to be the best that I could. And it's great because that taught me a lot. And in tennis, I wrecked my body. Like I still feel the repercussions of training 20 plus hours a week as a tennis player, and then shifting into climbing, being a competitor in climbing. That was also 15 to 20 hours of training. And it was really through all of that is how I developed a lot of my philosophies for how I approach climbing and how I approach coaching athletes now. That there is a caveat to pushing and wanting to push yourself as hard as possible, but you could also do it another way and really enjoy the sport and have a body that's going to serve you as long as you want, you know, or as long as you can. Sometimes you don't have that choice. But really the goal is to feel good for as long as you can and use your body as long as you can and find enjoyment in your life. And for us, luckily, we're going to find that we're going to use climbing as that modality to really enjoy life. Yeah, so I'm 40 now. I'm turning 41 in June. And what's cool is that I'm still seeing improvement. I cannot be a competitive climber anymore. There's just no way. Like I can't train at that level, that amount without completely wrecking myself. But what's cool is that like climbing is to me a lifetime sport. So is tennis actually, where in climbing you can see improvements in so many different things. And I still haven't, I don't think, reached my peak in top grade that I can climb, but I'm less concerned about that. I think what I really want is like progress in like some of these other aspects. You know, I still think my technique could improve, especially on certain terrain. Um, and so for me, it's like just continuing to enjoy the process of climbing and getting out, climbing with friends, having fun on the weekends. Yeah. And I think 40 is, I guess, old. I don't feel old.
I don't feel old at all,
Yeah.
which is,
I guess I feel a little broken, but I don't feel old. Like I'm
why
like,
do you feel
okay.
broken, Mercedes?
Yeah, I mean, like with tennis, there was so much rotation
Mm-hmm.
that I have a lot of back issues. You know, my
Mm-hmm.
back just doesn't respond well. And the one thing that's actually helped my back is this combination of strength and flexibility training. I got real, like I went deep and hard into flexibility training, and I have seen really just like positive results out of that process, which is why we offer a flexibility program now. Um,
I remember actually the
yeah.
days when you would tell me that you're not very flexible. You
Yeah.
would say, I'm not very flexible and I hate slab.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I told you to take my Scarpa shoes that were a size bigger than what you were wearing. And you're like, it works.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like I can't climb slab in downturned shoes. Lesson
Mhm.
number one.
Yeah. Lesson number one in slab climbing. No, but I want to go back to something. I actually want to just emphasize something for listeners and watchers, if you're watching, which is when Mercedes said she just like used one sentence. She's like, I played tennis semi-pro and then I did climbing. But I want to just emphasize Mercedes was, I believe, trying out for the Olympic national team or something, for her country of her choice. And I think it just, I want to just emphasize this, like Mercedes was really, kind of like at the very tippy top, like the, I don't know, 1% of all tennis players. And so it's not just like, oh, semi-pro could mean so many different things, but you were like really, really like at the edge of going pro, and you were certainly training at that level. So that was, really hard on your body. But and even when you started climbing, I mean, you just like hit the climbing scene running. And I know you at least participated in nationals once, maybe multiple times. I don't know, but you were definitely really early on, like, really into climbing and doing really well at it because you came into it with a very athletic background too. So I wanted to just
Yeah.
emphasize that to really also let people know like at what level you were at. So like you can really
Yeah.
speak to that, professional level. Whereas someone like me, who, I've always been like athletic, like I've always been able to move my body, but I never did anything in an extreme way. I wanted to, but I couldn't for, reasons I don't want to discuss right now. But yeah, and I've always been athletic, and before I started climbing at the age of 29, like a lot of people consider this old, which turns out was just fine for me. I'm 41 now, and I'm also still seeing improvements in my climbing, and I'm enjoying it, most importantly, I'm enjoying it. And so it's totally possible. And like obviously depending on your previous background, starting climbing at a later age might be an easier or harder journey as defined by grades getting into it. But we have a lot of quote unquote older athletes in their membership who are enjoying it, who are enjoying climbing so much, and they're still seeing improvements, excuse me. We have actually one athlete in our membership, I think she sent her first V8 in her mid-50s. And not to say everybody will be able to do that, but it just, as we are aging as a community, climbing is still at such a young sport, we're seeing more and more athletes perform at a, still fun level. And that's
Mhm.
actually one of the things I think we're going to get into in a minute. But I do want to briefly maybe define what we consider athletic longevity. We talked a little bit about this. Like, what does it even mean, athletic longevity? What does longevity even mean? That's like a whole nother topic. But for me, athletic longevity really just means staying as active as I want to be in the sport that I want to do for as long as I want. And I purposefully say for as long as I want and not can, because I think the word can kind of takes away some power for some people in terms of there's lots of people who say, oh, I'd love to do this, but I can't. And my question is, what do you mean you can't? Like I think we use language in a very limiting way for ourselves. I have a friend visiting right now. We talked about climbing, and he knows that I'm now a climbing coach, and we just kind of are chatting about climbing. And then, he's enjoying getting out again. And then he's like, well, I'm not a crusher, but, I'm getting out. And I was like, what does it mean to be a crusher? And he didn't have an answer. I think he realized right away. And I say this because he doesn't define himself as a crusher. But similarly, lots of people would say they can't do something. I would love to challenge people on that. And maybe it's just the perception of what they think that thing is. So let's say if you're someone who thinks, I can't climb anymore, which you're probably not because you're listening to this podcast, or if you think you can't climb, V3 or whatever you want to do, you can't climb outside or inside, I would just love to challenge you on thinking about why specifically you think you cannot do that. And what if you ask yourself, okay, that's what I want to do. How do I get there? And give yourself some time. Literally just changing your thinking from I can't do it to how can I get there? And I'm going to give myself all the time to get there. And chances are good you're going to make at least a lot of progress towards that goal, because as soon as you say I can't do it, you just close that door in that minute. And I'm going to tell you, you will not be able to do it for sure if you tell yourself you can't do it. Because if you're the one telling that to yourself, no one else can make you do anything. That is your choice. So yeah, that's what athletic longevity means to me, Mercedes. What does it mean to you, athletic longevity?
Well, for Modus, like I guess me and my company, I feel like we share the same identity. I think it's always been a motivator to move as well as possible for as long as possible, but feel very capable in the things that I want to do, not just in climbing, but all of the things, and uh, maybe because I have such a heavy background in athletics that I really do put kind of like movement exploration at the top of the list because it builds skill, it builds strength, it builds flexibility. And so all of that like physical component is really important to me. So being like physically capable, trying to be like pain-free and enjoying the things that I'm doing. But then there's also this other part, which is feeling really good every day. So maybe that means like sleeping enough, trying not to have too much stress in my life. Eating well, so because like there's definitely foods that make me feel not good, which is different to other people, but I've eliminated a lot of those things so that I can have this longevity in my sport and in my life. But I think really in the end, it's the enjoyment of it. And you already hit on it. And I think we should just kind of roll into it, which is the mindset component of longevity. Because it's so easy to like longevity isn't sustainable when you are constantly comparing yourself to other people, kind of what you were alluding to, like with your friend saying he's not a crusher. Compared to what? you know, like
Exactly. I think that's
yeah,
what he realized when I said, what
yeah,
does it mean to be a crusher? Like he
yeah,
thinks I am a crusher, but we talk about this. I climb with
yeah,
Olympians at my gym.
yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah,
they crush more
yeah,
than I do, but it's all relative.
yeah. It is
Yeah, no,
all relative. Yeah. But I think that is such a big component in athletic longevity is this mindset and
absolutely.
expectation and the words that you're using to describe yourself and others.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess our goal for this podcast episode was to share like three main, let's say, approaches to what we consider athletic longevity and maybe how to reach it if you care about it. And the mental game is obviously a big part to that. We believe that for so many aspects, but I think the most important one is too that if you're not enjoying the sport that you're doing, if you're not enjoying the training that you're doing, then it's going to be really hard to be athletic up into an old age because it's going to be really hard to keep up with that. So I think like bringing that joy into your climbing is really important. In fact, today I did a member of the month. So in our training community, I do interviews each month with the members. It's really beautiful. And I interview a new member each month. And I asked them, what is your one piece of advice for new members? And she said, make sure to laugh and have fun. And I just love that so much because training is going to go in all kinds of ways. Life's going to throw you all kinds of curveballs. It's just so important to have fun. And here's the funny thing. And I say this because I see so many climbers suffer under their climbing because they put their self-worth into climbing, because of comparison, because of expectations that they put upon themselves. But then when I ask people, why do you climb? They say, because it's fun. I'm like, well, but you don't act like climbing is fun to you. I don't say it that way. Like when I do my mindset calls, I, don't use other language, but I think it's so important for people to really have their conversations with themselves. Like most people climb because at some point it was fun. They want to do it because it's fun. But then something changes, and they put so much into climbing that now makes it not fun, like we talked about this, what I said, like a lot of it is like, attaching your self-worth to the outcomes in climbing. And what we end up doing in the end is we climb out of a lack mentality. Like we end up climbing and training because we think we're not good enough as we are right now. We need to climb X grade so we're actually going to feel better about ourselves in terms of like our own worthiness as humans. And people always think they're gonna like feel different when they climb a new grade, when they break into a new grade. And obviously people never do. There's just always gonna be the next grade. Right. And so instead, what we want to do is we want to actually climb and train from love. We want to climb and train because we love ourselves. And for that reason, we want to stay healthy. We want to train this body in order to be healthy because we love ourselves and not the other way around, not because we hate ourselves and we hate our body and we want our body to be different and we want our body to climb better. And the importance with that is because that is going to be so much more sustainable over the long term, bringing that joy into it. And of course, I just, summarize this in probably 3 minutes. Like it's not that easy. It's actually probably more work than actually following a training plan. But I think it's really, really important. And the people who I see, the old crushers out here in Salt Lake City, which is amazing to see, are truthfully the people who are still playful in their climbing. They're still just having fun climbing. And so when you have fun, you want to do something. It's like when you're trying to implement good nutrition habits. If you eat the vegetables, we call this eat your vegetables. I don't even like this phrase. This idea is when we say eat your vegetables, that implies you don't like them, but you have to eat them. I'm like, that's ridiculous. You can absolutely find vegetables that you like. And you know what? Athletic longevity should be the same thing. You will find a sport that you like. I guarantee you. If that's not climbing, that's okay. We'll be sad to see you go, but we want you to be happy. But it's really important to find that joy in the sport that you do if your goal is to be active in that sport for a long time.
Yeah. And I have gone through the ups and downs of loving the sport and also hating it and hating
Mm-hmm.
myself in this sport, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it is, again, like these are learning opportunities for me. And it just makes me a better coach when I go through, when I identify that this is what's happening to me. Um, yeah. And I've definitely put a lot of self-worth with the grade that I'm climbing. And I do, you know, I think I've really overcome a lot of that, which is, it's freeing when you're like, oh,
Yeah.
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 Like,
Can I ask you about that, Mercedes?
sure. What? What?
Like, because I like giving examples to our listeners, you know,
Mhm.
was there ever like a certain grade that you felt like you had to climb to be insert what you thought you needed to be?
Mm, well, definitely double digits,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
So what did you think? Do you remember what you thought it would be like, or how it would make you feel, or why you thought you needed to climb double digits?
yeah, I basically it was, well, I will be accepted as
Mm.
this super amazing climber and like elite performance coach, you know, if I'm climbing double digits, my whole life is going to change. I'm going to be so happy when I am climbing double digits. Um, yeah, there was definitely a lot that this picture in my mind. And this was actually before I even set double digits. This was like maybe when I was consistently climbing V8 and V9 10 years ago. And I was like, yeah, if I can only climb double digits. But as I got older, like that started to change. And I actually only was able to climb double digits when I kind of just let it go.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna ask you about this. This is like this is very common. I
Yeah.
was gonna I'm just waiting, you know, building this up. This is
Yeah.
very common. Because I
Yeah.
do remember, like, it took you, quote unquote, it took you forever to climb double digit compared to,
Yeah.
you know, climbing V8 and V9.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's really that. It's like our attachment to that very thing keeps us at the distance of that thing. So
Mhm.
being able to let go of that outcome, because I mean, I'm going into like, you know, mindset mode now, but it is really important. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. Can I now ask you, you already said you kind of let go of it beforehand, but now that you've climbed double digits, how does that feel now? And how do you compare your new thoughts to the previous thoughts that you had when you thought you needed to climb double digits?
I mean, it didn't solve any kind of problems. Like really nothing has changed. Um, it actually was easier than I thought it would be to get to double digit. Like when I
Mm-hmm.
finally like let go and I applied myself in a certain way, I reached double digit a lot easier than I thought. Because I was really suffering in my training. Like I would beat myself up physically and mentally to try to get to double digit. Um, and it just doesn't, it didn't have to be that way. And it didn't, you
Mm-hmm.
know. The one thing I would say, like these are things that I will say in my mind and never out in public, but here we go. I think
It's just you and I.
when I get comments on social media from men, like how hard do you climb? I don't actually say it in the comments, but I send them my link to my Kaya profile. I'd be like, you can take a look for yourself. And in
Mm-hmm.
a way, like it is somewhat satisfying when I can show them, hey, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
have skin in the game. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's maybe the biggest thing that it shows, that I have skin in the game. I have put my time into the sport. And yes, I have climbed double digit. But that's really the only place that I've seen this be beneficial. It's not even beneficial. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is like a totally like an aside.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like eventually climbing V10 was really, you know, like it was awesome. And it was still like, cool, what's next? You know, like what other
Mm-hmm.
boulder problems can I try? And I was that on that same trip that I did my first V10, I climbed like the hardest V8 that I had ever done. And I'm like, holy
Mm-hmm.
crap, like, you know, and that was super fun. And honestly, it wasn't the grade. It was just like, here's moves that I couldn't even do a year or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I got more satisfaction out of that.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind me asking how old you were when you climbed V10?
38,
Okay, very cool. Thank you for that.
39. Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the mental game. There's sort of two more pillars that we wanted to share today. As Mercedes said, there's a lot to talk about. We're
Yeah.
trying to keep this at a
Yeah.
reasonable length.
I did want to share a little bit about, because I think a lot of people feel like if they are having too much fun, that they're not trying hard enough. And yes, like I see this a lot in tennis, like coaches. I've seen coaches say, you're having too much fun, you're not trying hard enough. And so it is, I think, somehow like pervasive, especially in certain sports, and like that might trickle down to common people who are just trying to like, you know, get a little bit better in these skills. But the two don't have to, you know, they can exist side by side. You can have so much fun in seeing progress and in failing. You know, like I think it is fun to kind of fail. And I like to use the word, I'm continuing to try to pursue mastery rather than pursuing perfection. Like mastery to me is this consistent process of trying hard, evaluating what's happening, and still having fun on that journey.
Absolutely. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for sharing that. Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
number
So
2.
yeah, the second component is the physical side. There's a lot to talk about. And like I said, for Modus, we kind of have these 6 pillars, which is strength, flexibility, skill, recovery, nutrition, and mindset. So those are like our 6 pillars. Strength, flexibility, skill, and somewhat of the recovery can all be put into like that physical bucket. It is good to separate those out, but I really want to talk more about like the actual like physicality, which could be like one of the things we've been saying recently is strong humans make strong climbers. And I really love that. And I really do believe that in general health, and when we're thinking about athletic longevity, general health is such a big component of that. And if you are strong, you're going to move really well and you're going to feel really good. And components of feeling strong is having muscle on your body. And when we look at longevity papers, and people who are living for a long time maintain muscle mass on their body, or they, you know, like they have muscle mass on their body. And when we say mass, it doesn't mean that you're a bulky bodybuilder. It just means that you are somehow putting strain on your muscles and your bones so that they're continuing to be stimulated. They don't always have to grow bigger, but they have to be used. Because a big part of muscle mass, like having muscle in your body, is that your bones are also really strong. And so for long term, if you can start strength training, if you don't strength train now, I would like consider for yourself that strength training is going to last. It's going to give you this recipe for longevity.
And there's studies that show that you can start pretty late. There's never too late.
Absolutely.
You can start as late as 70. Like I think I mean, I've read these studies a long time ago, but like I remember the age being really late, and of course the gains that you're making at an older age are different. However, they're still beneficial to you, and they are beneficial beyond your sport. They're beneficial for just like general health and general longevity. And I actually used to work as an EMT a long time ago. At some time, we're going to have to do podcast episodes about all the 7 lives that we each had. But one of the things that I saw, and actually people talk about this when they talk about health studies, is that just being able to live life physically independent of other people, that means you don't need someone to go to the bathroom with. That's as simple as you're able to go grocery shopping on your own. And I'm talking old age. You go grocery shopping on your own. You can use the bathroom on your own. You can like move around in your own house or apartment on your own. Those are like real big indicators for longevity. There are studies that show that as soon as you're dependent on care and you might have to move into a facility or you're just not independent in your own life anymore, that's when people go like, I don't like to use the word down, but that's when people decline rapidly. So just being able to be physically independent and strong, whether or not you climb when you're 80, independent of that, that's why we like to like talk about your general strength first. You'll be so much better off aging gracefully and healthily if you are just as strong as possible. And when Mercedes says putting on muscle mass being strong, like these are probably differences people might not even observe physically. We're not talking about you getting really bulky, putting on a lot of mass. You might put on a little bit of mass depending on how you train and when you start, but this is all good mass. That's the mass that we want. And it's really, really important. And that's why we care a lot about this. So all of our programs have a general strength component because we believe that strong humans also make strong climbers. You have a great, strong foundation. And
yeah. And I think some people will maybe then be like, well, doesn't climbing make me strong? It does. Here's the thing about climbing is that it's a very specific sport. Like there's specificity to it. Like I even walking can make you strong. But if that's the only thing you're doing all the time, you're going to be very specific in that movement. And what general strength training does is that it encompasses these generalized movements: squatting, hinging, pushing, pulling. And in climbing, you might be pushing with your legs, so you're probably squatting a lot, and you're pulling a lot. You might not be hinging as much, and you're definitely not pressing. So we're missing some big components in climbing. And so that would be my answer. Like, yes, climbing can make you strong, but you're missing out on some of these key movement patterns that definitely, as a climber, if you want to get stronger as a climber, you have to work these other movement patterns. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, some other sort of positive aspects of just being generally strong is if you are a mom, you can pick up your kids for a long time and carry them around. More importantly, this sounds really silly, but actually for some people, that's a huge problem. You'll be able to play with your grandkids really well. You'll be able to carry your grandkids. And that I see that in physically aging, grandparents who are not able to do that with their grandkids because their bodies are too stiff and physically weak. So I said this at the beginning. If you're someone who would like to strength train, but you feel like you can't, I would love for you to ask yourself, how can I strength train? Because yeah, you might not be able to deadlift 200 pounds. You might not be able to squat your body weight. That's okay. You're just going to meet your body where it's at and strength train right there. As I said, there are studies that have shown that even like people in their, I think 70s or 80s, I don't remember the details, but still had great benefits from strength training as compared to their control groups who didn't strength train. So consider strength training.
And it's not just the physical benefits that you get from strength training. Physical, as in like, it won't just be movement that you see differences in, like how your metabolism works will change based on how much muscle you have on your body in a good way. Like having muscle on your body affects so many different aspects of how your body functions. Your metabolic rate increases, just even I think like how you sleep at night. I think just like having that metabolism, I guess everything comes down to metabolism. When we look at longevity studies, they talk a lot about your mitochondria and your metabolism. And so strength training really does hit a big component of that.
Okay, should we dive into number 3?
Yes.
Okay, what's the third pillar or the third component that we consider important for athletic longevity?
Well, I think like really we kind of already talked about it. It's that building good general health, but you can do this through building habits, you know, and if you can do that now, it's a lot easier to maintain habits compared to having to then create new habits down the road. And I've noticed this actually for myself. I used to move a lot more. And unfortunately, like I actually like talked to a very well-known coach who kind of like did not love the fact that I was doing a lot of movement training. And movement training is done at a very, very low level. It's like I would consider it recovery. But I did feel a little like I was shamed out of, like I kind of got shamed out of doing movement training. And now I'm trying to introduce it back, and it actually feels really hard to introduce some of these aspects back into my life because hasn't been part of my routine for the last couple of years. And so that's a big part of it. Like as soon as you can, try to build some good habits for yourself.
Yeah, I think that is actually so important, which is which is why it's our number 3, because, you know, it will be so much harder to start doing any of these things once you're older. And, you know, we already see this now at our age, as you said, but also just really focusing on general strength, right? I feel like so far we've talked a little bit more about physical strength and training and maybe some climbing, but just being generally healthy, which means make sure you get your sleep, make sure you get, you know, good nutrition, make sure you can reduce your stress level as much as possible, make sure you get fresh air as much as possible. Make sure, and honestly, this is where I would also put fun. This is why I'm so surprised. So maybe, you know, the performance coaches that you work with don't consider this, but you know, feeling connected to the people around you and just like enjoying life is so important for long health, you know. Because that's really when I think when we think about athletic longevity versus just longevity, sometimes there's also this component of, well, what's the quality of your life? And that's really where we want to get it with athletic longevity, is that what we want for people and for ourselves is like to have extended quality of life into old age. And some of these other components, and certainly building habits like strength training and moving regularly and having, you know, good, you know, food hygiene in general, you know, stress levels or the regulation of stress is really, really important. So I say this because sometimes for some people, adding training into their life can add stress into their life. So while we sit here and we say, hey, you know, keep climbing or strength train, and, you know, do all these things and, you know, eat well and sleep well, sometimes all of that together can add stress. And, you know, I can't give you a recipe on a podcast of what to do, but it's something to be really conscious about, because the people who add quote unquote healthy measures to their life in a stressful way, I would argue that's a little counterproductive. It shouldn't feel like stress. I mean, actually, physical movement counteracts stress, the bad stress at least, because physical movement is good stress and it counteracts bad stress. But if you feel really drained at the end of the day, chances are good, maybe by adding training, maybe you didn't sleep enough, or maybe you didn't eat enough, or maybe you didn't work out your schedule enough, or what I love talking about is maybe you didn't set good enough boundaries, meaning you're doing too many things. You know, even too many good things are not going to be good for you. So choose what you do wisely. Choose the habits that you're building wisely. More is not always better. Not for training and not for life. So there we go. That's my last 2 cents.
Yeah.
I think that's a good note to end.
We'll stop it right there.
Too much is not good.
Yeah.
So we're going to stop this episode right here. It's the perfect amount of time. Thank you all for listening.
Awesome.
This has been really fun.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. Bye.
Bye.